Hey everyone, Selwyn here from WynnStrength.com, bringing you the last day of week 9 of the Powerbuilding 2 template by Barbell Medicine. Today we'll be focusing on some heavy overhead pressing. And if you've been following my journey so far, you notice that the last couple of weeks I've been dealing with some almost blacking out issues when it comes to a heavy single. So we're going to try and overcome that today. We just hit 195 for a single and it felt alright. You'll notice when I get to the warm-up of the 195, there is a little bit of a misgroove on the first rep, so didn't quite get that up, but reset and was able to pick that up pretty simply. So we're gonna hopefully bust through that 205 today because it wasn't that heavy. I'm not too sure what's causing the loss of vision or the blacking out during the heavy presses, but I will address some breath control today. Focus on squeezing the lower body, the glutes and the core. Hopefully that fixes it up. If you do like these videos, please subscribe and find out if I am able to overcome this slight plateau in my training. Okay, so we just tried to do 205 twice. The weight itself doesn't feel like it's that big of an issue. I don't think I don't think strength is a lacking feature here. I think it has something to do with breath control and the way I am breathing and just preparing for the overhead press. This doesn't happen to any other lift, the deadlift, the squat, the bench press. In all the lifters, I feel like I'm going to pass out on the lifting part of the phase. But I'm going to play the video, the replay now, and you'll see that there's a misgroove at the start, and it happens again, even before I get the weight past here, and then I reset, take my time, taking another deep breath, and the weight kind of flies up. It doesn't feel like it's an issue strength-wise, but technique-wise, I think something is happening here that I'm not quite understanding. So with that being said, 205 went up pretty well. I do want to try and add in 5 pounds. We're going to eke this up to 210 and we'll see what happens. Maybe we'll catch it in another replay, exactly what happens with this overhead press of mine. All right, so we just wrapped up overhead pressing for today. To say I'm pretty disappointed is an understatement. We weren't able to bust through the 205 mark, so I guess one little victory is that I was able to put up 205 relatively easy. Had to do a retake there with the heavy set, but I did try to put 210 and it just wasn't budging. The blacking out issue just appeared right back. Even after the 190 to the 205, it was kind of there, but definitely at the 210, you'll see in the replay that it just doesn't pan out for me. I'm not sure what's happening. I think I might be misbreathing, not breathing at the right time before we unrack the weight. I don't know if the belt's too tight. I'm probably not flexing my legs enough, my core enough to keep the breath up. It feels like sometimes it gets just pretty disappointing with how the strength is progressing. It's been like this for this will be the 3rd week counting now. I've tried it in the mornings on an empty stomach, in the middle of the day after breakfast and lunch, and now we're in the afternoon with a full belly, as it were. So can't be food, it shouldn't be carbohydrates. I think it might be a strength issue as well as a timing technique issue. So I think I might have to go back to the drawing board, reassess it. Don't try and go heavy for the next couple of weeks, but really focus on those repping it out and getting that form down perfect. Because even when I start playing the reps, you'll see the 185 go up only 3 times. The 4th one is a complete fail. I try to push it up past my head and it just doesn't budge, and the vision starts to go away. So I did have to bump it all the way down to 165, where I was able to get a couple more sets of 4 in. I'm going to call it there, kind of call it a day for the overhead press and focus on a couple of other lifts for today. So overhead press, very disappointing day today. Okay, so we just wrapped up with a superset of close grip bench press and stiff leg deadlifts. I'm really enjoying the combination of these two movements. Really any bench press and deadlift variety works out well for a space like a garage gym when you have a platform and a cage to work with. It's a good way to utilize the platform and the cage. Think of other movements that you can pair together that utilize the space as well, especially if you have 2 barbells. If I had another set of J-cups or sandwich hooks, I'd be able to do even more possibilities of combinations of movements. So keep that in mind when planning out your own garage gym think of not just how to of a single movement, but think of how you can plan it out so you can utilize extra space to do some superset movements such as what I was doing today. Deadlifts and bench press work really great together because you're using two totally different muscle groups for both parts, whilst also taxing the entire body in a cardio GPP kind of fashion. So got the blood flowing, got the heart rate elevated with the superset, with the deadlift and bench press accessory movements. Not too happy about the results. We were able to get a little bit of extra volume out, so we got 2 extra reps at 225 for the close grip bench press. I was able to get 1 extra set of 6 with the stiff leg deadlifts at 325. So just a little bit more volume there, which I mean isn't a bad thing, especially when we think about this being a volume hypertrophy style set rep structure. So basically with hypertrophy, if we want to simplify it down a lot, it comes down to time under tension and volume of weights lifted, and you really just want to stick above a 60% of your estimated 1 rep max or actual 1 rep max. That'll drive some hypertrophy gains as long as you're pushing it to that 8-9 RPE level. So that's a really simplified version of hypertrophy focused training. So with that in mind, today's result was pretty good with regards to the extra reps and extra sets we got for these 2 movements. Now overall, as a day, not too happy with today's session. Being week 9 out of week 10, I am noticing that things are starting to taper off a little bit in certain movements, especially my weaker ones. I did get that new deadlift max a couple of days ago, but I'm still feeling a little bit fatigued from that. Lower back is still a little tender from that day, but nevertheless, push through the pain because DOMS isn't really something to be too worried about because it'll auto-regulate your movements for the day, which might explain the lighter weights used for the deadlift accessory today. Nevertheless, something to keep in mind is when you are training to think about your own body's needs of recovery, rest weeks, deload weeks, whatever you want to call them. You do need some rest every now and then, and for me personally, I found that 4 to 5 week cycle is probably right around that golden spot. Once I surpass that, I start to creep in some, not necessarily injuries, but extra pain, decreased recovery speed, so DOMs last a little bit longer than usual, and things just don't move as well, and I'm not looking as forward to training as I normally am. So although that being said, it'll also keep in mind what style of training you're doing. So when you do some heavy powerlifting style movements where it is more of a movement split rather than a typical bodybuilding body part split, with a bodybuilding body part split, you don't need as many deload weeks, especially since you're not taxing the central nervous system as much as you are with heavy loads. You're sticking with higher reps, so 8 to 12 reps for burnout sets and all that type of movement, and a lot of isolation work, so it's not as taxing to the body as, say, a single heavy squat or a single heavy deadlift. So whether you can talk about central nervous fatigue, I don't really think that's what the issue is. I think it's just the fact that lifting 500 pounds once is a lot more taxing than doing shoulder flies for reps with 30-pound dumbbells. So just a couple of factors to keep in mind, but do pay attention to what your body is trying to tell you and listen to it and take those necessary rest periods when applicable. So overall, today, not as stoked for today's results, but again, remember that strength is a mental game. Doing this is highly mental, so that first overhead press failure kind of got at me, and the session wasn't as great as it should normally be. Very demotivating for experiencing the same blackout phenomenon that I've been experiencing for the last 3 weeks. I'm not sure what it is. I think I might have figured out it's breathing, but all that being said, it wasn't a great session, but we keep at it, we keep going, because today's session we still put in some work and we still got the reps in, still got the sets in, still spent an hour and a half out here. So putting in some work, not necessarily the best work, but I think overall, in the grand scheme of things, it was productive. It helped attribute to some long-term goals. So thank you for making it this far. If you're still watching, please subscribe to see how the rest of the journey goes. After the 10 weeks, I will be putting up an overall review style video where you can touch on a couple of likes and dislikes and some great things about it and some not so great things about the program. Check out my website, the blog, WynnStrength, wynnsstrength.com, where I put up a weekly update of the training. So I'm able to put the weights, the sets, the RPE, the reps used, a little bit of hindsight 2020, talking about what went well, what didn't go well, what I could improve on, and so on and so forth. So I'm also releasing the Stoic Powerlifter series, where I introduce some stoicism into some powerlifting mindset to help motivate you and help you grind through the days like today, where it's not exactly the best, most satisfying workout you'll ever get. But nevertheless, you get in there and you do the work that has to be done. So thanks for watching again. This has been Selwyn from WynnStrength, and remember, a better life through strength.